Hello and welcome to another episode of I Demand a Homestead. My name is Amanda, and today what we're going to talk about is, it's another episode of our looking after your Warre Hive, which is a different kind of beehive than a Langstroth hive, or the typical one that most people have. So if you guys had a chance to watch my earlier videos on Warre Hives, I've got an introductory video, so you guys can check out that one. And then I've also got a video on how to install a package of bees into your Warre Hive. So if you recall, we installed a package of bees into that purple hive this year, much earlier in the year. That was probably in, I think that was May or June, and now we're in the middle of August, okay? So, and we're in southern Ontario in Canada. And this is the time of the season, kind of late summer, where it's what they call the nectar dearth, meaning lack of. So there are fewer flowers, wildflowers blooming. Now you probably can't tell because around my hive there's lots of flowers blooming, but I kind of plant my garden that way on purpose. I plant so that I've got flowers for the bees all year round, but there isn't a lot else besides what's in my garden blooming. Along our kind of countryside lanes, there's very little. So this is the time of year where I actually start to think, especially with a new colony and not so much with an established one, in fact, because this one is a new colony and they're having to build wax. They need a little bit of extra like nectar supply, so I will feed them this year. So what I had mentioned before is that in a regular kind of conventional hive, you use frames, and they oftentimes will have like a stamped foundation on them so that the bees don't actually kind of, and then you know, a lot of times those comb will be reused, so the bees don't really have to make that much wax. In a Warre hive, because it's only a top bar, they have to make wax every single time because you can't reuse the comb. And it takes 8 pounds of honey to make 1 pound of wax. So these guys will kind of need a little bit more support, especially during the first year when they're trying to build all that comb. So this is kind of where we get into talking about how to feed your bees. Okay, so in a Langstroth conventional hive, you can buy top feeders, which go on top of the beehive. And that's the way I prefer to feed it. I would never feed outside the beehive because that just attracts wasps. And you do not want to attract wasps to your hive because they will come in there, they'll eat the bees, okay? So definitely a top feeder is what I recommend. But you can't, because the box of the Warre hive is not the same size, it's smaller. So a top feeder for a conventional hive will not fit in the Warre hive. So you kind of have to take one of the boxes and see if you can find a, what I've used is a plastic bucket. That is a food grade plastic. So what we'll do now is we'll go inside and we'll make some sugar syrup for the bees, and then we'll show you how to feed these bees. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start making our sugar syrup. And we're going to do a 1-to-1 syrup, which is a better choice to kind of represent nectar. If you were feeding kind of later in the fall or in the fall or in the early spring, you would want to feed 2-to-1, which is more like honey. And then in the winter, you want to do something called fondant. But what we're going to do today is we're going to do a 1-to-1. Now, important to note that that is a 1-to-1 sugar to water ratio by weight, okay? So it's not by volume. So this is, because we're in Canada, and this is metric, so this is 2 kilograms. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna get my handy dandy scale here. If I can kind of get this down here so that you can see this a little bit better. Okay, oops, I turn it around here. Again, I zero it. So I know, let's try that again. I know that this is, the sugar I have is 2,000 grams, so I want 2,000 grams of water. Okay, and that is pretty much exactly right. Okay, and then I'm going to start pouring in my sugar. I kind of usually feed about this size bag at once because I don't want to feed too much. Otherwise, the syrup can go moldy inside the feeder, and we don't want that. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'll take it off the scale because I don't need the scale anymore. And I'm just going to stir this a little bit to try and dissolve it to start with. And I've got warm water here. But then what we're going to do is I'm going to put it, and this is white sugar, by the way, and this is what you want white sugar. Okay, and then I'm going to put it onto my stove and just heat it up enough to the point where this dissolves. It doesn't need to get super hot. I mean, you could if you were wanting to sterilize this so that the syrup would last longer. You could bring this to a boil and then cool it down to lukewarm. But again, because I don't make a whole lot all at once, I don't do it that way. Because they eat it up fast enough that I don't have to worry about sterilizing it first. So my syrup has, the sugar has dissolved and it is cooled down to room temperature. It's the right size to go inside the top box of the Warre Hive. And it's just this one is just dextrose corn sugar that I think I used when I was making hard cider. But that way, because it was used for a food product, I know that this is a food grade plastic, and that's important because you don't want anything that's going to have chemicals leaching into the syrup for the bees. So you want food grade plastic. You can see I've used it a few times because it's got propolis around it here that the bees have kind of have done. And I wash and sterilize it obviously in between each use. So what it is then is it's just a plastic bucket, and I have poked a few holes in here with a nail the first time, and then each time I kind of go through it, I kind of make sure that those holes are open again before I pour the syrup in, which is what I will do now. And then I'm just going to pour that right in. So that pretty much fills that bucket up almost right up to the top. All right, so we'll go outside, we'll carry this outside, and I'll show you how to put it on your hive. All right, so here you can see I have got our bucket with the sugar syrup, and I have got just an extra Warre hive box, and that's what I'm going to kind of put on top of the hive. Get here so you can see my hive. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to take that top there and the quilt box off, and then I'll have like a burlap cloth on top of the top hive box here, and it will have a hole cut out in it about the same size as the feeder, and that will allow the bees to have access, but then they won't come up into the feeder box because I don't want them building comb in there. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. First of all, we'll come and take the quilt box off, or the top box here. Okay. Okay, and then I'm going to take this one off. I've got my full gear on. I've done this without the gear on too because these bees are pretty docile, but just for proper technique, we'll do it this way. Okay, so I'm going to take this off. And you can kind of see this hole here, and I've got some of my little bee friends. Hello. All right. Now I'm going to put this on top of it. The orientation doesn't matter because I'm not putting bars in. And then what I do is I take my little syrup here, and I'm going to flip it upside down to let some of it drain out. You can actually do this away from your hive, and you'll see that it's dripping. Hopefully you can see that. And then at some point it stops dripping because it creates a vacuum inside there. And that is when we put it on top of our bees. There we go. Okay, well, we got a couple of them that are outside here, so I'm just gonna go on. There. And they will very very shortly figure out that's there, and they'll just come and take as much of that as they want. So then we will put the quilt box back on, like so, and then we put the top on. Okay, so now we have added feeders to both of our hives. I did add it to the yellow one as well, just because we've been in a drought, as a lot of places here in Canada and then also in the US. So we haven't had as much flower and there hasn't been as much nectar as there might have been. So I'm kind of just giving them both a boost in preparation for the winter, which is not coming yet. So as you saw, each one of these got a 2 kilogram bag of sugar. The purple hive, which was brand new, I gave a 2 kilogram, well, I think I gave two 2 kilogram bags of sugar feedings kind of right when I got the hive, as they were getting going, and my husband is in the garage anyway, as they were building up their population. And then I've given them another 2 kilograms now, and I'll probably give them another 2 kilograms of more like honey syrup in September, just to kind of make sure that they've got enough going into the winter. And then you really, as far as kind of how much your bees need and how often you will need to feed them when they're getting established, will kind of largely depend on where you live. So I'm in southern Canada, gardening zone 5B. So here in Canada, in our particular climate, our bees need about 2 full Warre boxes of honey and pollen in order to make it through the winter. That's generally been enough in most cases. Sometimes I do give them a little bit of fondant if it's kind of like early spring and I see they don't have enough, but I've only needed to do that once. So 2 full boxes is generally enough. So that's kind of what I aim to make sure that they have by the end of the season. And as far as kind of like, if you're thinking about when to take honey, in the first year that I establish a hive, I don't take anything from them because I kind of think they need all the resources to get through the winter. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually take honey in the spring once the nectar flow starts, because then I know for sure that they're going to be okay. If I'm at all unsure if they have enough, I'll leave. He's making a lot of noise. I will leave all the honey, and then I'll just kind of collect it in the spring. So I think I'm gonna go now because my husband apparently is fighting some kind of battle in the garage. Anyhow, if you guys have any questions about kind of feeding your Warre hive, please feel free to post them in the comments section. If you like this video, press the subscribe button and the bell for notifications for when I post a new video. All right, so you guys have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.